I, Mark Vanaker, am probably more like the typical married man than most guys are willing to admit. Although I love my wife and children, I can't help but fantasize about fucking another woman. It's unlikely that I'm any different from the average heterosexual man, since only 1 in 6 doesn't think the same thing. While I fantasize about fucking another woman, it wasn't something I seriously wanted to do. Well, yeah, I don't have the nerve to openly seek out other women. My ideal woman would be really hot, even hotter than my 5'4", 120-pound frame. She is beautiful and kind. But the fiery wife, Veronica, who most guys would rate at about a 9.5 on a scale of 10. Yes, and the ideal woman must be careful since I am not going to ruin my life. I had absolutely no interest in the flirtatious 20-year-old girls in my office, not only because they were too young and incontinent, but also because I believed in the truth of the adage, "Don't crap where you eat." Alas, its truth was later fully confirmed. So even though I had been fantasizing since I was about 30 or 35 years old, I never thought that I would succeed. Then, it happened. I was on a rare work trip to meet with a group of people in roughly the same business as me, although we were not competitors. It was essentially a workshop over 3 days, 2 nights, in a city 200 miles from my home, not too far to travel to the workshop, but certainly too far to drive home for the night. At the seminar, I met many good, smart, and sympathetic people. Yes, one woman turned out to be very hot. Her name was Jillian Morse. She looked to be about 30, but during the conversation it became clear that she seemed to be 38 to 40 years old. She was by far the most beautiful woman of that age with whom I have ever had direct contact. Gillian had an interesting past. She started working as an EMT straight out of high school and didn't go to college until she was 21, graduating 3 years later with a business degree as well as other health science courses that were easy for her. For her experience working in an ambulance, Jillian and I seemed to really hit it off. We had a great chat on the first day and evening of the workshop, and met on the second morning for a morning workout in the hotel gym. She showed me how slim and athletic she was. I showed her how strong I am. Indeed, I'm 6 feet 4 inches tall, 1.93 meters. I weigh 230 pounds, 104 kilos, can do multiple push-ups on the floor, and can do 50-pound, 23 ckg, one-arm presses. When we ate breakfast together after a workout, our knees, hands, and forearms often seemed to, unintentionally, touch each other. By the time the impromptu party was thrown on the second evening after dinner, I was convinced that Jillian was not only slightly sexier than Veronica, but she was also much taller. She's 6 feet, 1.8 meters. Than Veronica. Sleeping with her was a no-brainer, would be a completely different experience. What was also clear was that she was as interested in me as I was in her, and that the only thing holding us back was how much we trusted each other to remain secretive enough. Jillian, as I learned later, had a dry period in her personal life due to her husband's temporary illness. So, at an impromptu party, she lured me to a secluded corner. Neither of us drank alcohol, which made our frankness even more surprising. "I'll be honest, Mark," she began. "We seem to have a mutual attraction, but we are wary because we haven't known each other for long and are worried about trusting each other, whether we are being careful and cautious enough." I looked into her enchanting aquamarine eyes for a long time before answering. I couldn't have said it better. "I love my husband and children, and I absolutely don't want to hurt or disappoint them," she continued. "I feel the same way about my wife and children," I answered sincerely. "Are you ready to take a chance with me? Do you think the reward will be worth the risk?" "Hell yes. How do we do this?" "Have you already talked to your wife and children today?" "Yes, before dinner. And they forwarded my room number to my mobile phone." "And you?" "Yes, I talked to my husband and children right after dinner." "So, there are none of our seminar participants on my floor." She smiled. "Why don't I wander around for 15 minutes after the party and then go up to my room 7 and 10? After that, you walk around for another 15 minutes and then go up the stairs to my room and knock softly 4 times and twice hard." See you in half an hour after the party, I replied, squeezing her hand. Jillian and I did exactly as we had planned, and actually did not interact with each other again during the party, and even flirted with other seminar participants. When I knocked on the door, Jillian answered naked. Obviously, she had no intention of wasting any time. Seeing her, I instantly became aroused. "Take off your clothes and let's take a quick shower," she whispered. I think it was the fastest undressing of my life. We tore each other apart as we stumbled to the bathroom. Luckily, Jillian's room was top-notch because the shower stall was larger than the one in my room, giving us plenty of room to work on each other in the shower. Gillian clearly liked it when, after we dried off, I picked her up, carried her into the bedroom, and laid her on the bed. "I'm too big. I'm not usually treated like that," she giggled. When it's over. We were both physically and emotionally exhausted, because the sex, although short-lived, was intense to the extreme. I pulled her towards me, pulled the blanket over us, and soon we found ourselves in dreamland. I woke up when the clock showed 3:03 a.m. I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, Gillian was awake, smiled, and went about her business. When she returned, her smile became even wider. She suggested a second round. Again, it was amazing. As soon as we had recovered from our powerful rises to peaks and releases, we lay down again, facing each other, and quickly fell asleep. Luckily, our last workshop started at 10 a.m., so we didn't feel like getting out of bed at 8:30 a.m., Jillian said with a devilish grin. "Okay, let's get ready for training." "God, Jillian," I moaned. "I'm useless in the gym right now. You suck the life force out of me." "What does the gym have to do with it, idiot?" She grinned. "Here, I'm sure we can burn more calories in bed than in the gym." With these words, she began to excite me. Despite my morning sickness, it didn't take long. Once again, our sex was furious and vibrant. This time we took a quick shower together. No real pranks. I got dressed, slipped out the door, and went down the stairs to my room. She came to the seminar on time. I was only 2 minutes late. At lunchtime, we decided that it was better to stay apart so as not to arouse suspicion among others, but she asked for a ride home. She lived only 10 miles from my home in the same metropolitan area. I readily agreed. We left the hotel and drove back. For the first half hour, we chatted about how much fun we had and how wonderful our sex was. We then both admitted that as the glow from our gymnastics began to fade, we would probably both feel guilty. "I've never cheated on Paul before," she sighed an hour later. "As do I, Veronica," I answered. "Even though I know I'll feel guilty, I'll just try to be an even better husband and father," I smiled. "And I'm sure as hell that I'll never regret having sex with you." Like I said, it was supernatural. Jillian thought for a couple of minutes. "What a good way of looking at things. I will use this experience to become a better wife and mother too," she smiled. We then changed the subject and talked about the many common interests we had. We stopped for fast food on the way home, so when we pulled up to Jillian's house, it was about 8:50 and dark. In the area where she lived, the houses were located very far from each other. When I pulled up to the curb in front of her house behind the old blue pickup truck, she gasped. My front door is open, and I recognize this truck. It looks like he was exploring the area. "Call 911, I said, getting out of the car and heading towards the house. "Be careful," she moaned. When I got to the front door, I literally ran into a guy who was carrying a TV. He had a ski mask on his face. I grabbed him by the neck and slammed his head against the wall twice, causing him to lose consciousness. I heard a voice in the house, so I ducked around the corner between the foyer and what appeared to be the living room. "You stupid bastard, how did you drop the TV?" I heard a voice. "Oh, damn. What happened to you?" I saw a second guy wearing a ski mask standing over the first guy, unconscious, with a gun in his near hand. When he turned to me, I hit him in the face with my right elbow while grabbing his gun hand with my left, then hit him 3 more times before it became clear that he had passed out. Then I took the gun, a simple .38 caliber with which I was familiar, and walked further into the house. In the kitchen, I came across Paul, tied to a chair, gagged and with bruises on his face. I untied his gag and whispered, "How many are there?" "2," he whispered back. Relieved, I took out a kitchen knife, cut his ties, and asked where the children were and if he was okay. "The kids are at a slumber party and I wasn't too hurt," he replied. Then he asked, "Who are you?" "Oh, sorry," I muttered, clearly embarrassed. "My name is Mark Vanaker. I was at a seminar with Jillian. She didn't want to get back on her flight because turbulence was predicted, and since I live only 10 miles away, I brought her home. When we saw the front door open, I went to check and she called 911. After that, Paul came out to my car to hug Jillian. I stood guard over the 2 scoundrels who had just come to their senses, and the cops showed up. I put the gun on the floor before the cops entered the house. Paul had already told them the basic facts, and that I was a good guy. So they didn't threaten me, although I still raised my hands and pointed at the .38 caliber pistol. By the time 4 more police officers arrived, the 2 villains had already been handcuffed and had their ski masks removed. They were identified as 2 criminals with meter-long rape reports. I called Veronica, gave her the 2-minute version of the story, and told her that I needed to sign a report at the police station. She was worried about me, but I assured her that I was fine. After Paul, Jillian, and I made our statements at the police station, I apologized to Paul for causing the scoundrel to drop and break the TV. He laughed it off and thanked me for saving him. "I'm pretty sure they would have killed or maimed me before they left," he sighed. "They told me they were going to cut me into pieces after they took everything of value." When Paul left, she and I had 2 minutes alone. "Who would have thought that by having sex with you, I would save my husband?" She grinned. "I think I won't feel so guilty after all," she continued, planting a quick but passionate kiss on my lips. "Maybe we can do it again. I mean sex, not domestic drama." I grinned. "Maybe," she said, thrusting a piece of paper with her mobile phone number into my hand. Veronica and the children were very worried when I returned, and were happy when it turned out that I was okay. Veronica made me feel great. For the first time in my life, I had sex with 2 incredibly sexy women twice in one day. I went to bed with a big smile on my face, alternately thinking about sleeping with Jillian first, and then Veronica. After the incident at the house, Paul insisted on inviting me and my family to a picnic. Jillian and I were both a little apprehensive about telling our feelings for each other, but hoped we could be discreet. Oh, and if our families get together, we can have a built-in excuse if we somehow slip up and get caught together in the future. So we took on this with enthusiasm. The picnic was great. Gillian and Veronica seemed to get along well. Paul was a stand-up guy, and our kids were about the same age and seemed to enjoy the company too. There were only 2 minor glitches. My 7-year-old boy, who looks almost like my clone and is big for his age, quickly fell in love with my 8-year-old daughter Jillian, who is almost her clone. Well, on the way home, Veronica remarked in a difficult-to-read manner, "I didn't know Jillian was so hot. You never mentioned it." A bit of a sticky hint, but nothing more was said about it. Despite our obvious physical attraction to each other, Gillian and I were extremely cautious about creating new sexual interludes. Both of our jobs were demanding, and our offices were 15 miles apart, which combined with commitments to our families meant we didn't have a lot of free time. We didn't do work late, or girls, or boys' nights out. However, when we did get together, it was magical. Partly as a game, and partly to assuage our guilt, a week after each of our sexual interludes, we made a list of all the extra things we did that week for our spouse and children to make their lives better. Each time we tried to judge as objectively as possible which of us did the best job, and the other sent $25 to the winner. Only once, out of 5 interludes, were we both unhappy with ourselves. This game, and the fact that our sex lives with our spouses really seemed to improve, especially the sexual attention we were giving them, really helped assuage our feelings of guilt. Jillian and I went a full 6 weeks without having secret sex. We met at an event that both families had bought tickets for, which made my son very happy to see Jillian's daughter again, and we got a little careless after that. Veronica was out all day due to important meetings at work, the kids were at school, and in the morning Jillian was visiting a client just a mile from my house, so we met around 11 a.m. in the guest room in my house. For the first time, we allowed ourselves to meet in one of our houses. On that particular day, Jillian was really horny, and during sex, 3 times in a row, she reached the heights of pleasure, and it was so powerful that I thought she was having an epileptic seizure. Then, when I peeked too, it was so intense that I thought I might now have a seizure. As we lay next to each other after sex, kissing, playing, and extolling the virtues of each other's sexual abilities, my cell phone rang. I declined the call because it wasn't important, but for some reason, perhaps paranoia, I switched to the Find Phone screen to find out the location of Veronica's phone. To my horror, I saw that it was only 2 miles from our house. Without showering, Jillian and I quickly got dressed. Since her car was parked right in front of our house, there was no way she could get out or hide, so we quickly got out cans of soda and sat far apart in the living room, having a friendly conversation when Veronica entered. When we saw Veronica, we were horrified. She looked like a ghost. I jumped up, grabbed her, and asked, "What happened, dear?" She muttered something unintelligible and then collapsed. Jillian immediately got to work, drawing on her experience in the ER. While working on Veronica, she told me to call 911. After I called, I raced back to Jillian and Veronica, and Jillian threw me her car keys and shouted, "Take the first aid bag from the front passenger seat and bring it here quickly." If there is a record for the 30-meter dash, I broke it. There were 2 prescription bags, so I brought them both. Jillian picked one, told me to open it and remove the device from its packaging. I later learned it was a bronchodilator of the type Paul used for asthma emergencies. I quickly handed it to Jillian and she got to work pumping the nebulized liquid into Veronica's airway. The ambulance arrived there within 3 or 4 minutes. By then it looked like Veronica would survive, but we weren't sure. Jillian told the ambulance drivers what she had done and her opinion of the problem. They gave Veronica an adrenaline injection and then took her away. "You go pick her up at the hospital in your car, and I'll clean up here and upstairs," Gillian told me quietly. I thanked Gillian profusely, got into my car, and followed the ambulance. I canceled all appointments for the rest of the day and called my mom to pick up the kids from school since I intended to stay in the hospital. Fortunately, by 6 o'clock in the evening, Veronica not only felt better, but she also looked good. Even though she could have gone home, the doctor recommended staying the night, and we decided it was for the best. The doctor told us that if Gillian had not done everything necessary, Veronica would have died from an allergen that had not yet been identified at that time. Within a few days, everything was back to normal, and Veronica not only experienced no lasting effects, but also seemed more energetic than ever. We learned that she was gradually developing a reaction to some substance in the environment in the office building. I can't pronounce the name or spell it correctly. She took a large dose the day she almost died and barely made it home. She should have gone to the hospital. Her entire small office building was subsequently treated and all traces of the substance were removed to avoid recurrence. Veronica insisted that we invite Paul and Jillian to a picnic as a sign of gratitude, just like we did when I supposedly saved Paul's life. Of course, my son was delighted to see his girlfriend again. Just like last time, everyone really enjoyed it, and Veronica gave Jillian a necklace with the words "Lifeguard" in gold plated on it. As everyone left, Veronica hugged Jillian tightly and whispered something in her ear. When they broke the hug, Veronica immediately hugged Jillian's children, but I saw the look of shock on Jillian's face before she regained her composure. After that, before going to bed, I gave Veronica a 20-minute foot massage, her favorite activity besides lovemaking. Once in bed, she turned into a tigress. The sex was amazing. Having synchronously reached the heights of bliss, we were both completely exhausted and quickly fell asleep in our arms. Our picnic was on Saturday. On Monday, Jillian called me at work. She was not as talkative as usual, but on the contrary, quite serious. Remember how you said you were confused about why Veronica never really questioned you about why I was at your house that day? Yes, I was wondering why she accepted without further comment my words that we were just planning a surprise party for Paul, I answered carefully. Well, did you notice my shocked reaction when Veronica hugged me goodbye on Saturday? Yes, of course. What did she say? Veronica said, "Thank you again for saving my life. Thanks to this, you have a pass this time. But if you ever sleep with my husband again, no one will be able to save you." Jillian exhaled. This was the end of my happy romance with Jillian. Of course, it was a happy accident, because it definitely saved my wife's life, and I probably saved her husband from death or injury. Subsequently, I often thought about Jillian. My memories were always pleasant. But Veronica made sure that I constantly received sexual satisfaction. However, I never cheated again, and I think Veronica trusts me now. We see Paul and Jillian regularly, and will continue to see each other for many years to come. Why? Because 15 years after I met Jillian, my son married her daughter, so now we're related. It happened. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.